April 14th, 1975. Indian Army soldiers stand outside the Sikkim Palace in Gangtok. The Chogyal, the divine king, is under house arrest, and across the tiny Himalayan kingdom, a referendum is being held. The question on the ballot: should Sikkim merge with India? The result: 97.5% in favour. Within weeks, a 333-year-old monarchy had ceased to exist. A sovereign kingdom had become India's 22nd state. But here's what the headlines didn't say. By the time those votes were counted, the outcome had already been decided. Sikkim sits nestled between Nepal, Tibet, Bhutan, and India. It's a tiny place, smaller than the US state of Delaware, but its geography made it one of the most strategically important pieces of land in Asia. For centuries, it was ruled by the Chogyal, a title meaning righteous ruler, a Buddhist monarch descended from a Tibetan noble who arrived in the 17th century. The kingdom survived Gurkha invasions, British colonialism, and the chaos of Indian independence, always managing to hold on to a fragile sovereignty. But by the 1970s, Sikkim had run out of time. To understand what happened to Sikkim, you have to understand India's paranoia in the early 1970s. China had fought India in a bloody border war in 1962. Pakistan had just lost Bangladesh in 1971. And across the Himalayas, small buffer kingdoms, Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim, were seen as dominoes that could fall to Chinese influence at any moment. India's Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, was not willing to take that risk. She had already tightened control over Sikkim through a 1950 treaty that made India responsible for Sikkim's defense and foreign affairs, essentially a protectorate in everything but name. But Indira wanted more. She wanted Sikkim fully absorbed. The man standing in her way was Palden Tondup Namgyal, the 12th and last Chogyal of Sikkim. He was educated, dignified, and deeply committed to his kingdom's independence. He'd even married an American socialite named Hope Cook in 1963, a marriage that caused India considerable irritation, given Hope's outspoken advocacy for Sikkimese sovereignty. The Chogyal tried to play the diplomatic game, appealing to the United Nations, lobbying international support. But he was dealing with a much larger power, and time was running out. In 1973, pro-India political parties, backed and funded by the Indian government, began orchestrating riots in Gangtok. The streets filled with protesters demanding elections, demanding rights, demanding union with India. The Indian government used the unrest as a pretext to take direct control of Sikkim's administration. The Chogyal was sidelined. On April 9th, 1975, just 5 days before the referendum, Indian Army troops stormed the Sikkim Palace. In a matter of hours, the royal guards were disarmed. The Chogyal was confined to his palace under guard. It was, by any honest measure, a military coup. Then came the referendum. With Indian troops already controlling the palace, the streets, and the polling infrastructure, voters were asked to choose between the kingdom and union with India. Supporters of the monarchy boycotted, were intimidated, or simply found no way to organise in time. The yes votes poured in. On May 16, 1975, the Indian Parliament passed the 36th Constitutional Amendment, formally absorbing Sikkim into India. The Chogyal, still alive, watched his kingdom legally erased. The United States called it a takeover. China, in a rare moment, agreed, condemning India's annexation as gobbling up a sovereign state. Hope Cook left Sikkim and eventually returned to America. She spent years writing about the kingdom she had loved and lost. The Chogyal died in 1982, broken, they say, by the loss of his throne. He never reconciled himself to what had happened. And Sikkim? Today it's one of India's most beautiful states, famous for its monasteries, its cardamom farms, its views of Kanchenjunga, the world's third highest mountain. Many Sikkimese today are proud Indians, but the question of how Sikkim became India has never fully gone away. What happened in Sikkim wasn't unique. During the Cold War, small nations were regularly swallowed by larger ones, through coups, referendums, annexations dressed up as democracy. But Sikkim is a particularly clean case study. A tiny Buddhist kingdom, a resistant king, a calculated takeover, and a ballot that merely ratified what the soldiers had already decided. The last Chogyal's son, Wangchuck Namgyal, still lives. He still calls himself the Crown Prince of Sikkim. And every few years, the question surfaces again, in op-eds, in legal debates, in the hearts of those who remember. Was it integration, or was it erasure? Depending on who you ask, the answer is very different.